Welcome to the Better Automation podcast by PROCESIO, where we address one of the biggest challenges business face today, wasting time and resources on repetitive manual tasks. Our goal with this show is simple: to show you how smarter automation can free up your time, save you money, and let you and your team focus on what truly matters. I'm your host, Daniel. As promised to our listeners, we will have monthly podcasts with Mihai Darzan, the founder and CEO of PROCESIO. Each month, Mihai will share his expertise, insights, and practical advice on smarter automation. Mihai, welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Hey, everyone. Nice to see you again. Happy to be here. Hopefully, some good stuff are going to come out of this discussion.
I think so. Great. So let's start. I want to start by asking you what was the most unexpected challenge you faced while building Procesio, and what did you do to overcome it?
Most unexpectedly was us being able to sell at the speed and rate that we were actually expecting when we started Procesio. To be more blunt, we weren't able to sell Procesio as we were expecting. Like, we weren't able to go to market as we thought we would. We were expecting that the technology that we are building will be taken off the shelf like as fast as we deliver it. But it wasn't the case. We expected it to be um, highly demanded by technical people, but it wasn't. So what we did to overcome it was we pivoted a lot. Like, we have more than 10 pivots to date in the last 4 years. We've pivoted from how do we position, what is the technology for, what are the use cases, what are the features, what are the characteristics, and so on. How do we sell it? Who do we sell it to? What's our ICP, our ideal customer profile? What's the buyer persona? And so on. Like, what's the value proposition? And we iterated a lot. And what we ended up with, and basically we see it working, and we look throughout other companies, we look at analysts that are saying the same thing, is sell to business people, solve real problems, provide solutions for their problems, provide effective solutions that can apply easily, fast, and with as little as possible frictions within the implementation process. And then you will succeed. And that's what we are currently seeing. We have defined our buyer persona as the business people, and we're solving actual problems for actual business people, and we solve those problems as effective as possible and with as little friction as possible, removing any possible friction or problem in the sales process, in the implementation process, in the operations process, and so on. So that's what we find out. Hopefully, I answered the question.
Yes, you did. So this sounds to me like this challenge wasn't necessarily a technical challenge. It was
No,
more
it
like
wasn't.
a market-related challenge. How do you
Exactly.
position the technology in the market, not necessarily how you build it? That's interesting. Um, and I'm curious, what does this challenge? What was the biggest lesson that this challenge taught you and your team?
The biggest challenge, the biggest lessons that we learned is that we have a saying in Romanian. I don't know how to translate it. Like, in Romanian, it sounds something like the plan that you do at home doesn't fit with the plan that actually ends up being. Like, I don't know if there's a similar saying in English, but that's the idea. Like, our plan was plan one, but we ended up implementing like altogether something else. And that's the biggest lesson. Like, don't get your mindset on something. Like, be flexible, be open to new possibilities, be open that what you think you will end up doing will be completely different. Like now, I think not just me, but I think that all of our team are more flexible, more nimble, more open to changing our minds. Like we now feel that, okay, we believe something, but we're open to actually adjusting what we believe that will work and that what we believe we are and what we believe that we will be able to change the way enterprises automate their businesses. We have convictions, but we are open to have those convictions changed.
Mhm. I find that very interesting. So you said your buyer persona are the business people, still the users, the people who actually use the technology, who actually use Procesio, are technical people, not necessarily developers, but people with a technical background.
Yeah.
Um, so you also mentioned something about enterprise automation because, as we know, Procesio is a tool dedicated for enterprises. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the biggest challenges in enterprise automation? What are the biggest challenges that an enterprise is facing when they decide, hey, we need to do something, we need to automate things?
I'm going to say something controversial, but something that everybody knows, especially everybody in the enterprise knows. But not everyone admits it, but everybody knows it. Like the biggest challenge is the way they buy automation. And then the way they implement automation. And the fact that there are so many people, so many departments, and everybody has to be on the same page and agree with the solution that they buy and the way they implement and the way they chose that technology and the desired outcomes that they have and the priorities that they have. So you have to align everybody, and that's the biggest challenge, by far the biggest challenge. And I'm sure every enterprise, when they listen to what I'm saying right now, they will not. They will say yes. Yes, that is it. That's exactly so. So there's not a technical challenge, not a budget challenge, but an alignment challenge. And in comparison, if you take a step back, that's also humanity's biggest challenge as well. It's an alignment challenge, aligning the interests of all the people with all the departments, with the interest of the company, with the interest of the market, and so on. That's the biggest challenge by far.
That's super interesting. So basically, you can what you're saying is that you can have the best technology solution ever, but still, if you don't have that human touch, that skill to make sure you understand all of the shareholders involved needs, the needs of each one of the people involved. From if we're talking about an enterprise, we have multiple departments, so you should have that soft skill. You should have that set of soft skills that allows you to understand what everybody needs, bringing together everybody under the same idea, under the same decision, and then to start implementing the technology. That's super interesting. I'm curious, can you share with us a client, an example of a client that faced this fragmentation, that had, I don't know, multiple departments, multiple people involved in the decision making, and how do you manage to get everybody under the same direction, under the same solution? I'm really curious.
I just said that every enterprise has that. Like, I cannot share a particular name because at some degree everybody has this. Like everybody, every each and every of our client has this to one degree or the other, right? So I cannot give a particular example because I don't want to upset our clients, because we are very friendly with our clients and we believe in what they're doing and we want to help them as much as possible. But I will give you like example, but in general, what happens throughout all our
What's the process? What do you do to tackle this issue, to tackle this challenge?
yeah. So the first problem is that we are talking with the business department, but we are selling a technical solution, right? And that means that we need the technical department, the IT department, the CIO, the security team, and so on to get involved and validate our solution. And not only that, but they also have a lot on their plate. They have a roadmap with months of things that they need to deliver for the enterprise. They have priorities set like months ago. They are working on different projects at the same time, and they are also understaffed as the business departments are. And so when you go, like put yourself in the shoes of the IT leader. A business person comes to you. It can be a business leader, it can be the CFO, it can be the financial manager, it can be the COO, it doesn't matter. But somebody comes to you and says, I have found the right vendor for the problem that I've been experiencing, and just talk with them and see what needs to happen. Like their expectations will be, okay, now I need to security check them, I need to integrate them, expose APIs, give them access to stuff and so on. Like I already have another project on my plate that I didn't want. Like you can imagine that the openness degree of that IT leader is not going to be 100% due to those aspects. And what we're trying to do in order to align, because the company needs that project, that's the bottom line. The IT leader knows it, the business leader knows it, we know it, the company knows it, so everybody knows it. But how do you align so that it also fits within their existing priorities and not give them more to do, but give them less to work. And what we're trying to do is look at what they currently have within their stack and try to adjust to what they have as much as possible. Like we're trying to take from their plates, from the business leaders' plates, from the IT leaders' plates, and have them like if you don't give more to work for them, then they will be your friends. And that's what we're trying to do, and that's how we're trying to align all departments. And obviously, we find this in various degrees in different companies. Like there are different degrees of openness in the IT department. There are people that already have, like there are departments that already have different technologies already implemented. They have already integration platforms that they are currently using, for example, but they do not have enough people to actually use those solutions. And they don't want another technology to manage. And that's why we take the management of those of our technology under our umbrella, right? We don't give them more to work. If they want to us to install in their environment, then we try and give them everything as easy as possible. We give them everything that they need to provide to us, and then we take it from there. And we try to provide all the required information in advance as easy and as smooth as possible to make their lives easier. And that's how we try to position. Like we should be, and I think that everybody should have this view when you go and work for an enterprise and try to solve different problems, business problems for them. You should try to make their lives as easy as possible, not to make their lives harder, because you will not succeed. They will not choose you, and that's just part of the problem, part of the problem and solution. The second part is you need to show that you have the expertise to solve that problem, to take that project from the current state and finish it and take it to the finish line. And you should show that even before you start the project. You should um, give them enough trust in yourself and in the team that you can deliver that project. And you should show that by showing them like how do you implement, guide them through the process even before the process starts, so that they understand that you know that you have the capabilities, you have the expertise, you have the resources, you have the knowledge, you have everything that it takes for you to finish that project in good conditions as fast as possible without giving them work to do extra.
Mhm. Now that's very interesting because you mentioned anything. You didn't mention anything about technology so far. That's a very proactive approach, and it's more related to the way of doing business, not necessarily related to the technology. But of course, technology is super important. And I want to ask you something because I know there is a misconception. There's a confusion in the market. A lot of people, including myself, um, um, many times they confuse RPA, robotic process automation, with automation and orchestration. And I want you to help me understand this because also I think this would be very relevant for our listeners. Can you tell me how is Procesio different, fundamentally different than traditional enterprise tools like maybe UiPath or Microsoft Power Automate? What's the difference between Procesio and RPA tools?
Yeah, there are many differences. The reason up to this point why I haven't spoken about technology is that when the technology is potent and can solve the issue, that's not the problem. The problem is the expertise to use that tool to solve the problem. Now, going back to tools, obviously, like if you simplify things and look at problem solution, what's the gap between them? There's a tool and there is expertise. We've talked about expertise. Now let's talk about the tool. There are different tools for different jobs. There are tools that can be applied to different jobs, right? But there are limitations. And if you're looking at this ecosystem, like you would look at a puzzle, there are puzzle pieces that are bigger, that are covering different aspects, and puzzle pieces that overlap, perhaps, right? Now, going back to your question, um, UiPath, because you mentioned that, UiPath, it's RPA mostly. They also have some integration layers. They've added some app building capabilities and so on. But fundamentally, UiPath, it's an RPA company. And that's as Daniel says it, that's their bread and butter. And that's because that's their bread and butter, that's what they are. To their core, they are an RPA company. That's what they know how to do best, RPA. And RPA, it's a technology that it's needed and is going to be needed for like probably at least 10 more years from now. So from my opinion, it's not a dying technology, and it's a required technology. And it's required for when you need to automate or to bridge the gap between systems that do not have APIs. But the problem with RPA, and that's perhaps one of the reasons for which people are saying RPA is dead, which is not, is the fact that RPA is hard to manage. It's brittle. It requires a lot of maintenance. So whenever Windows, for example, has an update, many RPA flows are breaking. Whenever the user interface of the software that the RPA is integrating is changing, the RPA is breaking. And you need an army of people to manage those, to update the flows, to maintain the flows, and so on. And then another problem is that it fundamentally runs on the machine. It can run on a VM or it can run on your user machine. So what does that mean? It means that in order to scale it, it's going to be easy. Is not going to be easy. It's going to be complex. You need to orchestrate a lot of bots. That's why you have the orchestrator from UiPath and other RPA companies have orchestrators as well, because you need to orchestrate all that complexity. But when you have this complexity and you have complex flows to manage, that's another level of headache. That's another level of headache. And it's hardly manageable. So where does Procesio fit in all this? Like for us, RPA is an API. So whenever we have the need to connect to a system that doesn't have APIs, doesn't have direct connection to data, doesn't have the ability to export the data and put it in a storage environment, then we would use RPA on top of that particular gap and use the RPA as an API endpoint for that particular need and use it within a bigger complex process, which we are orchestrating. Like if we need data from the system and we don't have API, we use the RPA. If we have an API, then we take the data from there. If you have a storage environment with data, we take it from there. If we need to connect an email, we take it from there. And it scales automatically with the company, with the use case. It doesn't require anybody to manage those scaling and orchestration of environments. It doesn't require anybody to orchestrate the infrastructure underlying the technology. It does it on itself. If right now you need to scale it 1 million times, it automatically scales. Do this with RPA. Like, I dare you, do it with RPA. You will not be able to do it, not in a million years. Obviously, the technology is evolving. Like, they are going to do it better and better. But as they are doing it better and better, software and legacy software in particular is going to be replaced by newer versions which have APIs, which doesn't require RPA on top of this. Because RPA is brittle and it requires a lot of maintenance, it requires orchestration, and it doesn't. It's hard to build really complex business processes on top of RPA, and that's the reason.
So
And
what
so what I was explaining is related to RPA. And it's not just about UiPath. UiPath has another issue right now that licenses seem to be too expensive for their existing clients and for their partners as well, which is limiting in terms of covering different use cases. So for that reason, both enterprises and partners that were priorly selling UiPath in particular now are looking towards other solutions which have a lower entry point. It's not about the price, it's about the entry point to solving their problems, right? And all the other issues that I mentioned. And that's about UiPath and RPA. Obviously, there are RPA solutions out there that have a lower entry price and that are more accessible and that are adding more and more capabilities to catch up UiPath from a technology point of view. And in terms of comparing to Power Automate, I would say that actually Power Automate is one of the most similar technologies to what we have throughout the market. It has a high degree of similarity to what we are actually building. And the core difference with us is, first of all, once you get in the platform, you have access to all the functionality. We do not limit the functionality based on pricing tier and so on. We are usage based. That's another differentiator. On Power Automate, they price based on the user and not based on the usage. Another differentiator is that Procesio is 3 times faster than Power Automate, running in the same infrastructure, basically. And there are other like fine-tuned differences between Procesio and Power Automate as well, like easiness of usage, like the fact that we have a lot of capabilities in the forms designer. We have multiple scripting languages, more scripting language, like they have only one scripting language. We have 4 scripting languages, and we can easily add the new scripting languages as well. You can extend the functionalities. You can create templates based on the things that you've built and so on. Like there's an entire list of things that we do better than Power Automate. Obviously, like on the flip side, they have like really good distribution. But then that again comes back to business. It's not a product aspect. It comes back to business. They have, like Microsoft has the best distribution in the world.
Mhm. So, from what you're saying, I understand that if we're talking about automation, the RPA tools are very useful to automate maybe the first layer or just the first layers, but then you need a tool that has much more capabilities that allows you to handle complexity at a higher level and to orchestrate all of this complex workflows, complex integrations, and so on and so forth. If so, thank you for sharing this with me. If we're talking about differentiators, you named the main differences between Procesio and RPA tools. I'm really curious. Can you name 2 or 3 direct competitors with Procesio, other enterprise automation platforms?
Yeah. I would say Jitterbit would be one, and Workato would be another one. And in terms of differentiators, like if you look at each competitor, we are different in different ways, right? I already talked about RPA and Power Automate before, but if you look, for example, at Jitterbit, Jitterbit prices per action, right? They call it operations. Like we don't have this concept. Their operations is our actions, but we're not pricing on actions, because if you have one action that executes in 1 millisecond versus one action that executes in, I don't know, in 1 minute, they are different actions, but they price it the same, right? What does that mean for the client? It means that it's going to become extremely expensive really fast, like really fast. For us, we don't care how many operations or actions, as we call them, you use. We care how much it takes to execute. And that means that it's correlated to the value that you get from using those actions. And then we also have 2 pricing options. Like one is that I mentioned, like we are measuring the execution time and we are automatically scaling the infrastructure. So we give you the best possible execution time that you can have. Like in terms, like, for example, if you execute 1 million tasks, we try to execute them as fast as possible, executing in parallel at the same time those million actions that you have to execute. But obviously, each action consumes time, so you will be charged based on the processing time. On the other model, we are more similar to cloud infrastructure. Like you could rent execution environments from Procesio, like you could rent any VM, and you basically reserve a number of execution environments that you want to have so that you can execute in parallel those actions that you need to execute. So in this scenario, your price is fixed, and we're going to load those execution environments to their full capacity based on the things that you need to execute, and you have control over the pricing. So as you can see, it's quite different than just by pricing per operation, regardless of how much that operation takes, regardless how many operations you execute in parallel and so on. So you have full flexibility with Procesio, besides the fact that also they don't have multiple scripting environments. Also, they don't have forms and tasks, so you cannot build forms, you cannot build documents based on templates and so on. So we have all that and more. And I don't even want to mention the fact, but I will, the fact that we are much faster than Jitterbit in terms of processing speed as well. Obviously, they have competitive advantages to this point, but we're going to catch up over those advantages like really, really soon. For example, they have some predefined connectors to different software that are used in enterprises. We do not yet have those connectors, but in a few short months we will have that as well. So we will catch up 100% in terms of the things that they are competitive, more competitive than we are. But the things that I already mentioned, like they cannot ever catch up with us, ever. And that's because of the way they have structured their architecture behind the solution. And we understand how they have structured the architecture behind by the way they price, by the way their solution is designed, and the modules are put on top of each other and so on. So we understand how they are structured, and they cannot ever catch up with us. And that's the case as well with Workato. Like with Workato, they have a big challenge. Like the challenge is that if you want another workspace, you will have to pay anywhere from $10,000 per year to $40,000 per year per workspace. Whereas in Procesio, you can deploy a workspace in like this and you have unlimited workspaces. It doesn't require you to pay extra. Like you can use your processing time in as many workspaces as you want. We're not limiting. And again, they cannot catch up with us because there's an architectural issue. That's how they designed their platform. They cannot change that. So that's a limiting factor for them. And obviously, they in turn have other advantages over us, like distribution and so on. That's a business advantage. But we're going to catch up with them as well. Like we are looking and we are understanding which are our competitors. We see their differentiators, and we're covering that like really fast.
Cool. Thanks for sharing this. I think that the way I see things, you have the technology, which it's built on the right infrastructure right from the beginning. So it's like wanting to build a sky tower, but in the beginning, you know that you don't have the resources to build it, but you build the right infrastructure, you build the right foundation that will allow you at the right time to build that a big building. If you don't have that right foundation, you will need to build a second building and the third building and so on and so forth. So what you're telling me is that you've invested a lot of time, energy, and money in building the right foundation right from the start, and now you can add layer after layer after layer after layer and building that big building.
Exactly.
I'm using this
Exactly.
metaphor.
Exactly.
It makes sense. It makes sense. So you told me about the versatility of the technology, the differentiators. You also mentioned something about the workflows and the enterprises need to automate workflows. But why do you think there are still some businesses, some big companies, big enterprises that still hesitate to start the automation, still hesitate to automate their workflows, even though the benefits are obvious? Why do you think they have this resistance? in starting on this journey of automation?
Now, the answer depends on whom you're asking this question. Um, like the I would say beyond the answers that you're getting when you answer this question, the true answer lies, and the true answer is that people are afraid. Like they are personally afraid that if that automation fails, that failure will be associated to themselves. So they do not have enough conviction that the automation that they want to implement will be a success. And that's due to different factors, right? It's due to not trusting the vendor, not trusting the process, not trusting the solution, not trusting the potential return on investment, and so on. Also, it's due to alignment, like their um, their KPIs as a position are not aligned to what they want to build, so that's not sufficient justification for them to actually implement that. And I think that's in most of the cases. I would say 70% of the cases, probably more or less. Another type of reason would be compliance aspects, which might seem unproductive, but that's how enterprises work. It's they know and they have objectives to automate business processes, but they have all sorts of rules that prevent them from actually adopting such technologies that in the end will help them automate those tasks. And on top of that, on top of those compliances and those rules and so on, then they have other rules like they should build it internally. But internally, they do not have enough resources to actually deliver those projects. So even though they say, okay, let's close this contract, let's start automating this, the project drags too much, they cannot allocate resources, and in the end, the project doesn't happen. And that I would say it's 20 to 30% of the situations.
So basically, they fear, they are afraid, and they also need to be compliant. These are the biggest challenges. And how do you help them overcome these challenges? They are afraid. What do you do to help them understand? Hey, you don't need to be afraid. They need to be compliant. What do you do very fast that helps them stay
Yeah.
or become compliant?
So, what do you do when somebody is afraid? Probably afraid is not the right word to describe this. I would rather say it's more of they are not convinced of the success of the project. What do you do when somebody is not convinced of something? You ask them questions. And that's the way you do it. Like you ask them questions and then you show them the answer as they reply to you. And the way you show them the answer is by actually providing fast proof of concepts. Like if you have something to deliver for that project and you are able to actually show a proof of concept implementation like in 1 week, like between the moment you first talked with them up to the moment when you present the offer, you already have something to show them that's either related to what they want to build or actually exactly what they want to build, and it's purposely done for them to see that that project can be done and can be done fast. Then their conviction level grows really high. And then if you prove that you understand what needs to be done in that project, you build that conviction even higher. And how do you prove that? Like you show them, you take them step by step through the process, through what needs to be done at every step, at every point of that project. You prove that you understand and you have the capabilities to deliver it. And again, going back to how we started this conversation, It's not about the technology, not anymore, not for us at least. Like it's our discussions are not about is the technology sufficient to support that use case, because it is, and it's obvious that it is. Now it's about how do you use technology to deliver that use case. Because again, going back to the analogy with the tool, Procesio, it's a tool like many tools throughout this world. But if you have two different people willing the same tool, that exact same tool, you will get two different results, right? So for that reason, you have to be an expert in using that tool and understanding the challenges, the problem, how to solve them in order to generate exceptional results. And that's what we're doing with our partners. We're taking them through the implementations. We're holding them their hands. We are teaching them how to use the technology to generate the best possible outcomes that they can using the technology, which can deliver upon many levels of many levels.
You often talk about the importance of speed in automation, and
Yeah.
I want to ask you because you mentioned this to me before, and I want you to tell to the audience, why do you think that speed is more important than perfection when we're talking about enterprise automation today?
There are two types of speeds that we need to differentiate in this discussion. There's the speed of taking action in terms of like, let's do it, let's automate this process. That's one. I would say, I would name it the speed of implementation, right? There's the actually I will name it the speed of taking the decision. Then is the speed of implementation, and then there's the speed of running of that technology that you use to implement. So there are three levels of speed. The first level of speed, it doesn't depend that much on us as a vendor of technology. It rather depends more on the enterprise, on the end client. We are there in the process. We try to help them as much as possible to take the decision as fast as possible, right? But that in the end, it doesn't depend on us. Why it matters? Like, you're in a competing market. No matter who you are, no matter what company you are, you have competitors. Like, if you're the last one that's taking that decision to automate that process, you're the one that's the laggard. You're the one left at the bottom of the market. And what happens to the ones at the bottom of the market? Eventually, they exit the market, right? So that's why it's important. Then the speed of implementation. Like, what would happen if you decide to implement a project and it takes 3 years? It's going to become irrelevant. Like, that automation that you have just employed to be done will no longer be relevant. Your software has changed, your business processes have changed, your market that you are operating in has changed. Like, you already need to change that implementation in 3 years, not 3 years, in 6 months. Like, you need to be fast to implement and ready to implement again on top of that, to change that implementation as fast as possible, because it's going to be needed to be changed. And the third type of speed is the speed of processing. Like, if you have the speed of processing and you can rely on the technology like PROCESIO that can fastly process data, it can fastly run processes. Like, you can now have a new world of opportunities of stuff that you can build. Like, because we are fast, we can also be a backend for other platforms. We have clients that have built billing systems on top of PROCESIO or mobile applications on top of PROCESIO. or desktop applications or web applications on top of Procesio, or use it as an API layer or as a middleware and so on, because Procesio is fast. Like, what would it mean for it not to be fast? Like, you would have an entire world of opportunities just vanish or not even appear. So that's why I think speed is of key importance. And there are those three types of speeds.
And that's really interesting. You have three layers basically of speed. Uh, and the way you put it, I think, makes a lot of sense. And I want to link this with my next question. So it's completely clear to me, the three layers of speed. But how do you make sure? So you have that speed of implementation, let's say. How do you make sure that you can also help the enterprise stay or become compliant? So speed of implementation, how do you make sure that speed of implementation equals being 100% compliant?
It's actually surprisingly easy because compliance, it's actually a fixed set of rules. If you know those rules, like for example, you need to be security compliant, for example, right? We have ISO 27001, which we implemented at company level. All of our products are security compliant. We have penetration tests and so on that we can show and we can prove we're compliant. Clients also take us through penetration testing to make sure that we are compliant. They give us all sorts of questionnaires with questions about the way we do things and so on, so that they make sure that we are as well compliant as we will deliver projects and solutions for them. And that's the security compliance, for example. But then you have other types of compliance aspects that you need to take into account. But then again, those are also fixed rules as well, that if you know, you can support them, you can keep them into account, and how do you say it? You obey by them, right? And we do. Also, there are compliance aspects that are different from industry to industry, from company to company, and you learn about them. Like, we haven't yet encountered something that we are not compliant or that we cannot easily become compliant to the requirements of those companies. And I think that's of key importance for a vendor such as ourselves to understand that aspect. And when we talk with the clients, with the enterprise clients in particular, to actually try and make their lives as easy as possible. Like, if there's a compliant aspect that we cannot fulfill, they cannot give us the contract. And we know that, they know that. Even though we solved the problem, if we weren't to have to be compliant with the rules or the market that they are in or other types of regulations, we will not be able to take that contract. Unfortunately, like, we haven't encountered yet any case where we weren't compliant or couldn't comply with the regulations.
Mhm. Can you share with us real life, maybe one or two examples when you needed to be so fast in implementation, and what were the what was the client reaction? What was the outcome for the clients? If you can name one or two real life situation, that would be super
Yeah.
helpful.
So the first thing that comes to mind is Louis Vuitton. Like, when they came to us, they had a situation where their trucks that were transporting the goods were stuck in customs for days. Like, the situation was urgent, at least urgent. And like, we closed the deal really fast. We understood the time pressure, and even before we closed the contract, even before we had anything signed, like we delivered the solution in 3 working days. Monday we started, on Wednesday we delivered the solution. Like our standard time was 2 weeks for this project, but we mobilized so fast because they had this pressing, urgent aspect, like people, actual human beings, people, drivers in the truck were staying at the customs waiting for their trucks to be unlocked. And like, we were the solution for that, and we delivered in 3 days, and that was fantastic. Like what the team managed to pull off was absolutely incredible. Like we were amazed ourselves at the speed of how they delivered. And part of it, not just the fact that our team loves what they are doing, was also the fact that it was Louis Vuitton. Like our team wanted to impress those guys, and I think they managed to do it.
Wow, that's really impressive. Um, and Yeah, I can only imagine what the impact on their business was to have these trucks staying days at the customs. Um, do you have another example? I would love to hear another example, a real life example, if there is any situation like this, an edge situation when you came with the team and you managed to help that specific company achieve a great
Yeah,
outcome.
there are many examples. Like we did a similar thing. We delivered in 3 weeks the project for Siemens Healthineers. It was extremely urgent. Like they were facing with the situation of potentially not having their invoices paid. Like there were a million of euros at stake here. We delivered in 3 weeks. Another example is with Taco Fashion, where we pulled off in 1 month to deliver the billing solution and implement it in all their stores throughout Romania. It was a project for Romania. Another example is DHL, where we managed to deliver extremely fast. Like this was a more complex project. We implemented an e-transport hub on top of PROCESIO. We delivered it in, let me think, it was several months, but it was extremely complex. I think 4.5 months, something like this. I'm not wrong about this, but either way, less than 6 months. Basically, connecting PROCESIO to their systems, collecting information about the transports, the switching of trucks, and so on, and keeping everything synced with connecting it to different clients, allowing the clients to enter into a portal that we built on top of PROCESIO with PROCESIO, correlating all this information, building a mobile app on top of it to track the GPS locations. Like it's extremely complex. Like if you were to build this in a classical way, this is a 3 years project, at least a 3 years project. We pulled it off in close to 5 months, 4.5 months, I think, something like this. Like when I say 4.5 months, it means 4.5 months since the moment we signed the contract till the moment it was in production. Like that's fast.
Wow. Wow. So they were already using the solution. They have everything implemented, and they were using the solution.
They are using the solution, yes.
Wow.
From go live, they are using the solution.
Amazing.
Like this solution, like we started working with them somewhere in July, something like this. Like this is in production since November or something this year. So it's
Amazing.
already in production. It can be checked online.
Amazing.
We also had a press release with them. You can check the dates to see.
Definitely, I will. We will link this to the podcast. It's very important for people to learn more about this. Yes, so we are getting closer to the end of this today meeting, but I still have two questions. And I'm curious to see your view about which are the industries least automated that could benefit the most out of automation.
The industries. Oh, there are many industries, like a lot of industries, and not just industries, but domains from education, like universities, for example. In the last period, we saw a lot of projects in this domain, to automotive, to transport, to logistics, to retail, to financial services, banking. Like almost there's, I would even say that there is no industry that would not benefit from automation. Like imagine wherever you have a business process, and you have business processes in any business, regardless of the industry or domain, like whenever you have a business process that's repetitive, it might be worth automating. It doesn't mean it has to be automated, but it might be worth automating. And if you have large volumes, like the frequency is high and the volume of those processes is high, then you have a higher chance of getting a lot of benefits from automating those processes. So, based on the definition that I just gave, it means that if you're looking, for example, in retail, where you have a lot of client interaction, in utilities, where you have a lot of clients with client interactions, in financial services, a lot of clients like insurance and so on, credits, debt release, and so on. Like everywhere you have a lot of interaction, high frequency, large volume, there's like 100% benefit from getting automation into your company.
Amazing. And I have one more question. I'm curious to see your view about the future. So I'm curious, what do you envision about Procesio 5 years from now? How do you see yourself? How do you see Procesio 5 years from now in this automation industry?
When we started building Procesio, I always regarded Procesio as a platform, as a technology within a platform. Now I think it's more than that. I think it has the potential to become an ecosystem. And I think in 5 years from now, Procesio is going to become and it's going to be the ecosystem for automation, the ecosystem for automating processes. I think that's where our place is, an ecosystem of business. I saw a term that I like, the operating system of businesses. I don't think we're going to be the operating system of businesses, but for sure we're going to be the missing gap between the systems throughout all the systems within a business. Like whenever you need something that you're missing within your business, for sure you will find it in Procession. And I think in 5 years from now, we will be there. We will be there. Like at the beginning of our discussion, I said like Microsoft has distribution. That's their power, not necessarily the technology. I've discussed as like a side note. I've discussed with a supporter of Power Automate, and he recognized the fact that our technology is superior to Microsoft. But he said like we will be with Power Automate because they support the technology, even though they move like really slow, like an elephant. They will be there in 10 years as well. And they can easily go to your company. They can spread throughout the company and so on. Like going back to your question, I think in 5 years we will be there side by side fighting with solutions such as Microsoft. We will have also distribution. And we will be one of the key players in the automation industry, helping businesses succeed and automate their day-to-day tasks, tying systems, orchestrating data, helping people save years from their lives.
So in 5 years from now, Procesio will be the lion fighting the elephant.
Exactly.
That sounds like a great plan. Amazing discussion. Each month, I'm so grateful we have this discussion because it gives me answers to so many questions that I have. I'm learning a lot through our discussions, and I hope our community will find this content valuable. I'm sure they will. So thank you so much for another great talk. Before we finish, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think our discussion was quite comprehensive. Like we touched a lot of points. Also the future, also the past, the present. The only thing that I would add is I hope that our users spread the word. And I think that's really important. That will help us a lot to spread the word. Like if you're watching this and you're a user of Procesio, a partner or a client, please spread the word. Tell others about Procesio. And that's the only way we will be able to actually achieve what I mentioned we can achieve in 5 years, only with your help. So I think that's something that will help us a lot. And I think that will benefit the community as well.
Now that's a great call to action, man. Let's spread the word about Procesio. Amazing discussion. Thank you so much. We will spread the word. So thank you so much, Mihai. Until next time. See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you, Daniel. Nice
Thank
talking
you.
to you.
Thank you.